Welcome to the Potboiler. I'm Patrick Hughes, and this is the Hero Business, Part 6. Potboiler is an old term for pulpy paperback genre writing that I think needs a cool new costume and cape. Let's do the intro. Eric's heroic deeds have reintroduced his long-estranged foster brother into his life. And while his relationship with Molly deepens, his quiet life of solitude and habit is becoming an increasingly distant memory. At the same time, his new doctor is seeking a deeper understanding of his strength and his weaknesses. After leaving a session with his doctor, Eric encounters a young woman on the bus that appears to need his help. He embarks on a rescue that ends tragically, but commands popular media attention in the aftermath, focused more on his notoriety than on his desire to help. Heroism invites conflicted scrutiny. Good deeds often come with a consequence. The episodes of this story will be offered with no embedded commercial interruption. Visit patrickhughes.ca for links to me and my other projects. And please stick around after the story for some light business. The Hero Business features excerpts from my novel, The Valiant Unheroic, available for order on my website. Eric Verity rocks. Chapter 18. Dr. Maynard started their visit that day by bouncing from his seat, rubbing his hands together exuberantly and announcing how he wanted to try something different, humming and fidgeting as he led Eric to the elevator and descending to the ground floor. He walked ahead of Eric through the maze of hallways to the office building's exercise facility. Patient log entry number 22, November 12th. I'm confident enough now in the rapport that I've built with Eric to start to explore the extent of his physical abilities. The first logical phase is strength and endurance. As we do these tests, I hope our mutual trust will allow me to move into the next phases I have planned without any incident. Have a seat, Eric. I bet you're wondering what we're doing here, aren't you? Eric nodded his head slowly. Yes. His eyes probed as his head bobbed 3 times. Let me start by saying that you have nothing to fear from me. I want you to know that you can trust me. You do trust me, don't you, Eric? He hesitated. Yes. It wasn't a question he was accustomed to answering. I know that you can do special things. I know that this was something that you and Dr. Harmon discussed at great length. I also know that you do things to help other people, usually at night, and that you never take credit. Unfolding before him was one of the strangest moments Eric had ever experienced. He had endured a great deal in his abnormal life thus far, but true to the form of the past few weeks, this was unexpected. A curtain had been pulled that he wasn't prepared for. He felt undefended and almost vulnerable. He was accustomed to being quite the opposite. I think we can do a great deal in our development if we learn more about your special attributes. Again, I know that you and Dr. Harmon never did any similar testing. Eric pondered many things as Maynard spoke. This is the reason we're in the weight room. I would like to test your strength and endurance a little. Would you be comfortable doing some tests with me today? Again, he answered slowly. Yes. They started on the treadmill. Soon after beginning, beads of sweat collected across Eric's forehead as the bit of excess on his chest and stomach bounced slightly with every stride. Sensors on the handlebars that Benjamin had him grab every 30 seconds or so monitored his heart rate. It was clear early on that jogging was not Eric's specialty. His form was ungraceful, his arms kind of changed rhythm, wasting energy unnecessarily, and he didn't know how to breathe properly. Maynard kept the pace at a seemingly comfortable level while Eric patiently waited for the test to conclude. 100 minutes passed, with Eric still jogging, free of any further signs of exhaustion. Maynard, who was in exemplary shape for his age, could not have sustained that pace comfortably for so long. Many athletes couldn't have. He split his time furiously taking notes and ogling Eric intently. Patient notes continued. His muscular and cardiovascular system appears to be resistant to conventional exhaustion. No flush complexion, stimulated blood pressure, or any signs of fatigue followed the initial perspiration. Further investigation will reveal the source of his special physiological energy, be it at the blood oxygen or protein level. A resistance to exhaustion may mean a higher threshold for food or even oxygen deprivation. Strength level testing proved most interesting. Eric far surpasses the normal levels of a man of his age and weight. He showed visible discomfort at 500-pound bench press, but no real signs of limitation. Deadlift exercise, which requires less coordination and mental effort, was far easier. We did not have enough plates to reach a recordable limit. The young man could likely lift my car. Though an impressive musculature is not apparent, naturally developed muscle tone does exist beneath a moderate level of weight. It is uncertain whether his weight and his musculature would be affected by conventional calisthenics or aerobics. I would expect his muscle fibers would be resistant to conventional tearing and regrowth. Eric seemed anxious as the examination began. I can tell that what I was proposing was unexpected. Eric's habitual nature and undeveloped adaptability sees any changes as confusing. He soon warmed to the testing. I assumed that he was reacting to my excitement. Eric clearly has skills outside of the realm of normal human potential. If my suspicions are correct, then the resistance to injury that I've suspected derives from its similar source of that of his endless endurance. Could his body structure be free of all cellular breakdown? My only hope is that the experiments I have planned don't upset the subject to the point of frustration or regression with regards to our emotional connection. The physical test garnered a slightly different outcome for Eric, as they did from Dr. Maynard. Eric had never before qualified his strength or his abilities. In truth, he didn't want to know. Knowing he was different was something he had to deal with every time he looked into someone else's face, every hour of every day. The precise degree to which he was different was information he lived happily without. Finally, knowing, or at least having an idea of his capability, aroused an excitement in him that he wasn't expecting. But in truth, even Eric would have trouble distinguishing whether his subdued level of excitement was a product of his own revelations or of Maynard's. As it became apparent that his strength was beyond average, beyond different, and Dr. Maynard's face rose with glee, Eric realized a new kind of different. For the first time, he was achieving, defeating the challenge put before him. He was being told all the while, amidst the doctor's scribbles and notes, that he was doing something no one else could. He was doing something special, instead of just something different. Eric sat quietly on the bus later that evening, pondering his revelation and wondering what Maynard's examination had in store for him in the coming weeks. He looked forward to their next session in a way he previously hadn't. Very few endeavors in his endeavorless life had him eager with anticipation. Staying at Maynard's office far longer than he had before, the cold November nighttime had fallen for his bus ride home. The lifeless fluorescence running the length of the bus cast a different light on this part of his daily routine. He remarked to himself how the same kinds of people that surrounded him on the ride looked different with the dark dusk around them. He could see their expressions weren't cradled in the same comfort provided to them with the sun falling down with them through the windows. He scanned their faces, and it seemed harder, until a chill passed his neck and pulled his head in another direction. He turned back to look to the rear of the bus to see a pair of eyes focused intently into his. The young girl bashfully looked away soon after their eyes met. Eric wasn't certain what it was in particular that kept his attention on the disheveled teenager. Her appearance was pale and unkempt. Oversized clothes hung over her like she was a wire hanger, and as though she hadn't changed them for days. Her clouded eyes were sunken in black. Her bony fingers rested on her bony knees as she examined something in the vicinity of her tattered shoes. She wasn't accustomed to looking people in the eye. Nobody else was going to notice her. It wasn't the first time poverty had crossed Eric's path. He could accept that in his city there were people, even children, of unfortunate circumstances. Something was different about this girl. Something more than impoverished. He couldn't stop looking at her. The bus came to a stop and she peered at him once more before getting up and exiting with the crowd. Her last look haunted him more than the first, sending a rupture of cold to the crown of his scalp. He couldn't have explained it, but he was drawn from the bus at the last moment. The doors nearly closed on him as he jumped to the street. It was 4 stops before his, still in the much seedier neighborhood. He could see the girl up ahead, walking under the streetlights, hunched over to protect her body from the cold. At first he thought he could chase her down to inquire about her safety or her shelter. He was also aware of the possibility of crossing into a line of intrusion. He then decided to observe things for the time being and resolving not to interfere. At first, he had trouble keeping up with her hurried pace, crossing streets and blocks. Coming to the mouth of the alley, he saw she'd stopped to talk with someone slumped into the garbage next to a dumpster. He could see the man's fingerless gloves and blackened digits reach up feebly to her from his seated position. Eric's initial impression was the man's intentions were malicious and that he would have to intervene. But the streetwise youngster slapped his hand away. She followed the slap with a few random profanities before continuing on down the alley. The fence at the end offered her little obstacle as she quickly climbed the chain links and threw herself over. Eric nodded politely down at the alley's vagrant, mumbling incoherently. He maneuvered his way awkwardly up the chain link fence and stumbled as he dropped to the ground on the other side. He regained his footings and his eyes rose to the street ahead of him. The girl was standing about 50 yards ahead of him, under the glow of a streetlight, staring at him the way she had before. She didn't appear to be worried at all about the stranger following her. Her expression was calm and needy. She was beckoning him forward. She turned suddenly and darted into the apartment building across the street. As he approached, he could hear her feet stomping up the stairs. He looked up the front face of the building to the only lit apartment. A figure stood in the window and walked towards the front door as the girl's tromping footsteps drew closer. A chill rose through him that grew in intensity as the closer girl got to the same apartment door. Bounding into the front foyer and of the rundown building brought him to a halt. He hesitated about his trespass, but felt obligated by what he knew he had to do. Yelling he heard from the next floor shook the indecision from his head and sent him flying up the stairs. He stopped again at the apartment's door. As he tried to confirm more evidence of danger, the door shook with a thump. Multiple voices crying and screaming then followed, along with the ring of shattering glass and final rake of cold under his skin. A polite knock rapped on the apartment door. "Go away!" The same polite knock. "Go the hell away!" "Help us! He's got a gun!" He knew the voice belonged to the young girl. The same polite knocking. One extra knock. "You are screwed if I have to open that door." That was enough. "You won't have to." He slammed his palm into the door just above the deadbolt. It swung open before him like it was made of paper. The three bodies in the room he entered scattered like cockroaches. The disgusting state of the apartment struck him first. Food, clothing, and various items he couldn't recognize were strewn about the carpet and furniture. The body directly in front of him was a malnourished man about his age wearing faded blue jeans and no shirt. He lunged from the couch into the kitchen, while the girl and another young woman crawled along the wall and crouched together in the far corner of the living room. They reacted as though the scenario was well rehearsed. Eric spent a moment too long surveying the situation. A part of him couldn't move forward without some further incriminating stimuli. A moment of silence can last an eternity. His attention returned to the man in the kitchen as a shotgun fired, exploding the couch to his immediate right. He stood stupefied as cotton and foam erupted around him. "Sugar, don't hurt him!" The two girls cried out almost in unison. Eric turned in time to see the man's eyes in the kitchen doorway. They burned at him through the ungroomed face and the shotgun he held at hip level. He watched the end of the gun barrel explode in front of him. The two girls screamed, the skin loose from their bones. Sparks spread in all directions as the black slug launched straight into his chest. His body flew backwards, his shoulder taking a chunk out of the doorframe as he flew back into the hallway. Splinters of the wood he smashed through burst through the air and fell on his chest as he dropped to the ground, his head crashing into the floor and the wall as he landed. "Which one of you bitches called the cops?" The force of the shot caught Eric off guard. He peered about, disoriented, lying on the floor, and brushed the splinters from his chest. He He noticed a large burn hole through his shirt, as screaming and confusion raised in his ears. The activity inside kept them from noticing Eric rise to his feet. He walked slowly back into the apartment, following the screams silent. He looked straight into the eyes of the craven young gunman as he marched toward him. Disbelief held Sugar momentarily as Eric calmly crossed the carpet. His homicidal instincts returned at the last moment. He raised the shotgun again, this time certain he wouldn't miss. His finger was ready on the trigger, his fangs were showing. Sugar was ready to exclaim victory as Eric's fingers wrapped around the barrel of the gun. Sugar's index finger depressed and released another explosion that ripped a large shard from the ceiling. Eric and Sugar's eyes met as the shotgun sounded. Both of them thought they were winning. Eric's grip changed Sugar's eyes. Eric stayed expressionless as he forcefully ripped the barrel of the gun from Sugar's left hand and rammed the left side of it into his face. The young man's head folded backward against the shotgun's crushing blow. His head bounced back already, rushing blood through his nose. Sugar's expression was fiercer in its pain. He growled as Eric ripped the shotgun from his grasp and dug his fingers into Sugar's neck. "Who the hell are you?" He tightened his grip around the young man's throat and brought his face in close. Sugar stopped struggling. Eric looked deep into his eyes. Eric had his attention. "What are you doing to these girls?" Drugs, related paraphernalia, and all manner of incriminating material were strewn about the room. Eric truthfully wasn't sure what was being done. Instinct had propelled him this far, but he sought a viable reason for his intrusion. "What you mean? I ain't doing nothing to these girls." Interrogation was a skill that Eric had yet to hone. He was lost momentarily, uncertain how to further the situation he'd created. Every encounter he'd previously been involved in revolved around circumstances where he had to intervene. He'd always caught the bad guy in the act. He never had to make a judgment about someone's guilt or the severity of a crime. He had to find something to justify this. "Are you a cop or what?" "I'm not a cop." Finding out that the intruder was not police revitalized Sugar's incensed feeling of violation and retribution. He grabbed Eric's arm with both hands, trying to loosen his grip. "They make us do things," a small voice came from the corner. "Shut up!" Eric extended his arm, thrusting Sugar into the wall with a thump. "What does he make you do?" Unconsciously, Eric's grip around Sugar's throat tightened as the two girls took turns outlining prostitution and drug-running activities. One girl was 14, the other 16. Both were runaways. Sugar found them on the streets. It was the kind of relationship that quickly loses its romance, but retains the illusion of vitality. Both were clearly fed up with the abuse, but found themselves without options. Eric's eyes fell back on Sugar, whose face contorted as he struggled for breath. Police signs echoed through the streets and alleys. Gunshots had apparently alerted one of the few concerned neighbors. Eric ordered the now docile Sugar to take a seat on the couch. He did so, coughing quietly as his larynx adjusted to the reintroduction of oxygen. Eric found some peace with the incoming sirens. He felt stalemated, not knowing what now was required at this turn of his intrusion. He felt secure that their impending arrival but uncertain that his act would be justified. He assured the two girls that they had nothing left to fear from the police. The closer the sirens got, the more he felt rescued. He knew he had a lot to learn, finding himself in a precarious situation of his own creation. Sugar led a troubled life by all standards. His most recent parole conditions stated that the next infraction ensured him his best years spent incarcerated. He gathered himself on the couch, repeating to himself silently that he couldn't get caught. His freedom was gone. I'm screwed. I can't get caught. Neither could his roommate. Overseeing the room with Sugar and the two girls, Eric stood with his back to the kitchen and the adjacent bedrooms. The expressions of the three before him stretched open as the bedroom door opened behind him. Hard hit the wall with a smack. Eric spun around in time to see a large shiny pistol come out from hiding. A fierce glare was visible behind it. "Bobby, no!" The girls screamed again in unison. Bobby screamed as he fired. The first bullet struck Eric in the face. He could feel the hot punch in his cheek as its concussive force threw his head back. The second shot hit him right in the shoulder, further disabling his balance. The older girl wailed incoherently amidst the eruption of noise and fury as Eric fell backward into the wall. He pushed himself back into balance almost immediately and lunged at the young gunman in the doorway. The bullets wouldn't stop him, but Bobby's feral grimace wasn't affected until Eric's hand wrapped around the hands of his gun. His eyes panicked as he managed to pull the trigger one last time. Eric whipped him forward, tearing the gun from his hold and sending him flying into the living room's coffee table. Just as the screaming had ceased, a new screaming began. He stood over Sugar and Bobby as heavy footfalls could now be heard, pounding up the stairs. The girl he followed from the bus was crying, the other one now silent. Her weeping body was draped limply over her silent friend. Her face was buried as she moaned and sobbed. Confused over the display, Eric stepped over Bobby and crossed to the corner of the room. A team of policemen then reached the open doorway. The apartment's state of criminal disarray sent the four uniformed men into a flurry of bellowing, gun-pointed orders. Oblivious to the yelling behind him, Eric knelt down beside the weeping girl. She looked up at him. Her eyes were glowing a soft, sad red. I was there that night of that motel fire. I saw you go back in to save that baby. I knew you'd try to help us. As she spoke, he looked down at the girl lying beneath her. She was face down. The wave of cold returned. There was a pool of blood collecting in the carpet. Bobby's last bullet had found a target. Eric's eyes gorged in oxygen and disbelief. He couldn't look away. One of the older girl's long, looped earrings sat on the floor in front of him. He didn't think to resist as the firm policeman's grip soon had his coat at the shoulder and forced him to the floor. His eyes couldn't focus. He stared off in the distance. Past the whirling red lights, the commotion of the people and the officer trying to take his statement. He ignored the cameras that flashed in his face and the questions that flew at him the way they did outside the motel. He was the focus of worship again. But his mind was stuck in another moment. Mr. Verity, Are you going to make a habit of this vigilante activity? Is there perhaps a more headline-friendly name we could use for you? The heroic attention throbbed around him. He could see one of the police officers who was first on the scene growing increasingly agitated. He could sense that ire was pointed squarely at him. Soon after, he parted the cameras and the notepads, standing right in Eric's face. All right, superstar, hands behind your back. I'm taking you in. Eric turned about like an obedient zombie. The officer's partner quickly jumped in as the cameras scrambled for an image of the handcuffs being clasped. Eddie, what are you doing? You saw it up there. This guy's got to go in. He tried to stop what was happening up there. We've got his statement. He's free to go. Look, Lou, just because your eyes are blinded by all these friggin' flashbulbs doesn't mean mine have to be. This punk ain't getting no celebrity treatment from us. If he didn't try to be no hero, then none of this would have gone down. Tell me that ain't true. As the two officers argued whether or not Eric's efforts would earn him praise or a criminal charge, a group gathering across the street caught his eye. One by one, they saw the hero from the newspaper. He could see the excitement in each of them as they noted this person of note. All he could think about was how his noteworthiness had affected the opportunity these people had lost to extend their remorse to the murdered young girl. Popular opinion would remember Eric as the man who saved the girl from the grip of the ruthless pimp drug dealers. Eric would remember this night as the one where he directly caused an innocent girl's death. He wondered if he would trust his instincts again. His open hand was a shotgun shell and a loop earring. The inexpensive silver finish glittered under the streetlights. He looked quietly down at them. They would soon occupy his keepsake box on the left. Chapter 19. 5 o'clock looked the same every morning. It felt the same as it looked, and it never looked good. Molly's responsibilities required an early head start. After ensuring her sisters were awake and ready for school, she had to tend to morning preparations at her store before its 7 o'clock opening. It had been 7 years since she was left in charge, and she missed her parents and cursed them for leaving almost every day. Losing her parents and taking over the family business had robbed her of her adolescence. She didn't regret missing those awkward and exciting teenage moments, parties and proms. Her only fear was that she knew time and life were passing without her, and soon she'd look back on another segment of life that she missed. Every now and then, she was alone during the slow parts of the day, and she wondered if duty could continue to drive her forever. Molly fed off the warmth that those in her life reflected back to her. Being selfless was more than a day job for Molly. Sometimes sacrifice can be a hard thing to appreciate. Elizabeth, why do we have to go through this every morning? Molly only used Betty's full name when she was especially annoyed. Betty was the youngest sister and by far the most rebellious. Getting her ready for school on time was a daily struggle. Molly was thankful every day that Betty's adolescent problems rarely extended past punctuality and accountability. Your lunch is on the table. I have to get down to the store. Thankfully, Martha, 2 years Molly's junior, had taken on a much more helpful role as of late. She helped in whatever capacity her college class schedule would allow. Allison, in her last year of high school, was captain of her cheerleading squad and pretty as a living Barbie doll. Grudgingly, she accepted her adjacent responsibility. She was old enough to appreciate that Molly had to give up so much. Though the humidity level in the store often played havoc with her hair, she was in 2 nights a week and worked the cash register on Saturday after cheerleading practice. Both Martha and Allison played a role in Elizabeth's discipline. They were really quite a team, but only one of them could play the mother. As is the norm with kids and parents, everyone but her 3 sisters had noticed Molly's renewed invigoration over the past few weeks. People who are accustomed to those around them can tend to overlook the nuances. When you take someone's presence or happiness for granted, a new smile is sometimes easy to miss. She had a new hum when she shelved the produce, chocolate, and shampoo that was undetectable to her siblings. She skipped and pranced about as she did her morning sweeping and other preparations. Mr. Fogarty, the man who'd had perfect change for his morning paper and coffee for 30 years, watched her sing to her broom, while he added his cream and 2.5 sugars. He'd known Molly since she was a toddler. There was a special reason for this behavior. "What's with you today?" he said with a chuckle. "What do you mean?" She had taken to singing the tune from the radio aloud at the end of her broomstick like a microphone. His question interrupted her chorus. "What do you mean? What do you mean? You're dancing around like a fool. Are you in love or something? Did you get lucky?" Words like these usually sound strange to a young woman coming from an elderly man. "Oh, Mr. Fogarty." His verbal antics were a trusted staple of her work environment. She giggled with the smile of a child hiding something. She had news. She was dying to tell someone. No one knew about Eric or their budding relationship. To the other girls, he was another anonymous customer, and a rather weird one at that. Truthfully, Molly didn't know how to tell people about Eric. She didn't know how to classify their relationship, if they even had that. Was he her boyfriend, acquaintance, associate? Allison and Elizabeth often preyed on her social ignorance, the way know-it-all kids do to their middle-aged parents. Molly was desperately uncool and past her fashionable prime at 24. She'd been on dates, set up by acquaintances and various charitable souls, but never had a real boyfriend. In her young adult life, she'd never had the goo-goo eyes for some boy, or had sleepless nights of obsessive infatuations, or experienced the pleasure of being swept off her feet. She was used to being lonely, the way single parents are lonely. They invest their hearts into those that depend on them. "Mr. Fogarty, I've met somebody." The sassy, soulful, retro-obsessed old black man was probably her best friend. He was the first one she told. "Oh, yeah? Do I know this Casanova?" "He lives in the neighborhood. Comes here all the time. Well, on Thursdays, actually. He's got short, light brown hair and wears a long brown wool coat, usually, even in the summer." "You mean that white boy that always buys the same thing and never talks?" "That's him." Molly understood the face value presentation Eric offered. Didn't offer much of a good first impression. He seems a bit... I don't know. His name is Eric. He's special. Her eyes looked away as though she was recalling a sweet moment or anecdote Mr. Fogarty hoped he would one day hear. Wait a second. He witnessed that same look before. Is he the one who stopped that punk from holding you up that time? Yes. He's a real-life hero. She said it like her sister Alliston would adoringly talk about the high school quarterback. Mr. Fogarty could see there was something in this. Something more than just a lonely person seeking another lonely person. I'd like to meet this guy. It is Thursday, right? Yeah? Well, he should be here within the hour. Her morning routine was almost finished. Everything was priced, cleaned, hung, and presentable. There was a thud outside the front door telling her the stack of morning newspapers had arrived. She dropped the stack on the stand near the register, expertly flicked off the plastic tie, revealing the front page headline. She shook her head, looked again, and shook it again, in a wave of disbelief. The headline read, "Does our city finally have a hero?" There it was, in black and white, the lead headline. And there he was, looking away from the camera, off into the distance. Somehow the picture was constructed. It was him, but it wasn't. Looking stoic and powerful in a posture he was not capable of. Her eyes stayed attached to the picture as she slowly grabbed a copy from the stand. She remained silent as she started to read the article below. What is it? Mr. Fogarty noticed her trance. It's him. It's Eric. Eric was right on time for his weekly visit, managing to enter while Molly and Mr. Fogarty scanned his front page news. His presence was about the only thing that could tear them away from their reading. She was speechless at first, silent as he smiled at her warmly. Her elderly friend peeked up a moment after to look at him with a familiar awe. For the stranger, he reverted to his standard bashfulness. He nodded quickly and brought his eyes back to the floor. He walked past them without missing a stride and began mechanically going through his regular shopping routine. Eyewitness accounts of the exchange of this alleged drug dealer's apartment report that Mr. Verity was shot at point-blank range more than once, that he threw a grown man across the room using one arm, and that he knocked the secured apartment door nearly off its hinges barehanded, leading many to speculate about this man's true origins. Does he carry some sort of special government-issued body armor or weaponry? Is he himself a special government project? Is he indeed even human? I ask you, gentle reader, should such a being be allowed to roam around freely, step into potentially life-ending situations and answer to nobody? What if he walks into your house next? What if the situation was handled by the proper authorities? Perhaps Megan Schultz would still be alive today. Wonder how the late Miss Schultz's parents feel about Mr. Verity's heroic methods. Many in this city and many working for this paper and this website say we have a new hero. I say we have a new vigilante. The last thing this city needs is that kind of help. What really worries me is a simple principle of evolution. If this vigilante, Mr. Verity, has abilities that allow him to do things no one else can, how long will it be before someone stands up to match him, or perhaps best him? If our city is now home to some sort of super hero, how long before a super villain comes to town? I call upon all of you. And it just goes on like that. Molly's disgusted expression ruffled along with the paper that crumpled in her hands. On the front page, they call what you did heroic and selfless, and then this editorial prick, Ethan E. Edwards, has to tear you down. He's just trying to sell papers, bastard. Molly had managed to halt Fogarty's celebrity worship of Eric back at the store before it ensued. She was certain the adulation of a stranger would have been more than he was prepared for. There was no way he'd expect to be front page news. She didn't know that the strained attention was something he was growing accustomed to. After taming her excited old patron, Molly calmed and invited herself over to Eric's that evening for some more spaghetti. Eric smiled at Molly's outlay of concern. He observed her intense expression as she pored through the articles and the opinions. With the mention of Megan Schultz, his mind had momentarily taken him elsewhere, to a place his head was consumed with guilt. Aside from Mr. Edwards, everyone had forgotten Megan. The police, the press, the onlookers, the on-listeners, and even Molly all wanted to talk about heroes. No one seemed to want to discuss costs. Everyone forgot about a tragedy in the face of something they found newsworthy. During the melee at the apartment, he could hear the other girl, Erica, whispering and crying her name over Megan's motionless body. Arguments about accountability and vigilante justice didn't mean much to him. It was a lot less about the lines of correctness and gray areas for him. It was all far simpler. It was about one girl's life, a life that would never greet another day. He was supposed to help Megan, and he didn't. He was responsible for her life. Every moment that his mind wasn't occupied with something menial, he thought about a girl he'd never known. He saw Julius Harmon's deceased corpse lying in the open casket at his wake. He saw Todd's body fall motionless on the football field before him. The images scarred his memory, the delicate, innocent stranger lying face down before him, by what he feared may well have been his own hand. Eric, listen to me. I don't care what these people say. I know you went into that apartment trying to help those girls. She held his face with her firm fingertips softly against his soft cheeks. I don't want you to believe people like Edwards. I know you are here to help people. You did the right thing. Do you hear me? He did, and he almost believed her. There's something else we need to talk about. Ever since the day he stood between her and that man's gun, without an ounce of apprehension, Molly had something she would eventually need to talk about. Like everyone else standing in front of that burning motel, she witnessed something beyond the everyday. She'd known for a while that, in addition to an unshielded genuineness, there was something special about Eric. She'd seen the scattered articles of anonymous acts of heroism. Like Maynard, she too sensed they were connected. She'd long suspected what he did for people in need. It seemed perfect that the hero in real life would be the last person you'd expect. Molly resisted during this tender part of their relationship, raising a discussion that would make him feel different. But now she sensed things were changing. The public eye would soon fall on Eric and change everything in his world. Eric, do you know what this means? She held up the iconic front page picture and that always looked and felt unfamiliar. No. He had no idea. Eric, this changes everything. It's going to be hard for you to help people like the way you did before. As Molly continued, Eric's contented expression told her that he had yet to hear something that warranted her level of concern. You're not going to be anonymous anymore, Eric. People are going to talk to you when you don't want them to. They're going to ask you questions you don't want to answer. They're going to force their way into your life. They're probably going to force their way into the lives of those around you. Eric's face bounced up with a sudden frown. The glowing TV screen animating the background suddenly caught his attention as the obnoxious theme of a tabloid celebrity gossip show proposed ludicrous questions about the day's movie idol and speculated personal habits. When you become a public figure, your life isn't yours anymore. Whether you like it or not, it belongs to the people who want to know about you. Though it never offered any answers, the ceiling of his bedroom always gave Eric a clear place for him to arrange the day's tribulations. That night, above his head swam the scant bits he labored to remember about Megan Schultz and the inevitable siege Molly had described earlier that evening. In his memory, Megan was little more than an expression of surprise and terror, cowering in the corner of that putrid apartment, while in his chest there was an enormity that weighed on his heart. He could remember that her face was vividly adorned in makeup, and her tawdry clothes were tight around her gaunt figure. Every attempt had been made to make her look more mature than her natural innocence would allow. He could remember that scream that she let out when the shooting began in a pleading voice that he assumed was hers. That voice continued ringing in the background of his mind as Molly's voice took over the foreground. It spoke of consequences, warning him of a life that was no longer his. The possibility that those close to him being affected by his actions struck him in that moment that she mentioned it. Though he couldn't picture this negative aspect of a public identity, he knew that the potential was always there for actions to somehow adversely or indirectly cause someone he cared for to feel pain. Couldn't imagine how people with the cameras could take anything away from him or how people could affect his friends. It was Molly's tone that bothered him more than the content of her discussion. He hadn't seen her speak with her voice's musical tone so deeply buried since the holdup. Faces of those he failed swirled with the faces of strangers and their flashing cameras and questions around on his bedroom ceiling. For the first time in his life, Eric Verity felt burdened. Lying in his bed, he started to wonder what kind of life his purpose had in store for him. Chapter 20. The beams of dawn maneuvered their way through the buildings and into his bedroom. By 6 o'clock a.m., Eric was out walking. His appointment with Dr. Maynard wasn't for 3 hours, but this morning he would take the long way. It had been ages since he'd taken one of his walks that early in the morning. It was at least the first time in ages he'd taken his eyes off the sidewalk in front of him. There was a different form of peace than the one he felt at night. The colors on cars and storefronts made everything look more appealing, like the scenes around him were now smiling back. The emptiness he was used to was replaced with a crisp warmth. His thoughts began to clear as the sights and sounds of his rising neighborhood provided a perfect distraction. As he crossed through the park into the downtown's commercial section, 5 blocks over from his therapist's office building, he started to excitedly anticipate the day's meeting. The dew-covered grass whisked under his feet, collecting droplets of water on the toes of his shoes. The droplets started to spit upward as his pace began to quicken. He looked forward to the duplicating of the feeling of accomplishment from the session a few days before. He needed more to distract him. I'd like to talk about something. Eric needed advice. It was the first time he'd said those words to any doctor, aside from Julius Harmon. They were the words Benjamin Maynard had been waiting to hear from his favorite patient for months. I'm afraid this will have to wait, Eric. I've booked some time for us down at the lab. Eric's expression noted the unexpected response. He knew his doctor was attempting to attain this kind of connection with his strategically planned interviews. Before that morning, Eric really had nothing to say. Where many may have been offended by the doctor's halt, Eric found himself intrigued. Benjamin had a car waiting outside the lobby. It glistened black in the morning sun. Eric had never been in any environment of such luxury as he found his seat in the car. He noticed his doctor's ease amongst the leather and chrome and sensed his own visibly contrasting uneasiness. For the first time, he felt a real division between he and Maynard. It was hard for him to notice divisions of any sort in the office he was accustomed to, which had been carefully crafted to foster none. Oh, hello, Dr. Maynard. I haven't seen you down here in a long time. How have you been? Maureen Chappell had the ability to establish an instant rapport with anyone she met within 2 sentences. She was sister-in-law to the Science Research Center's building manager and found in her 14 years at the reception desk that the perfect place to spread her smile around. She loved playing host. Who's this handsome young man you've brought in with you this morning? She felt that playful flirting was always irresistible, coming from a cuddly middle-aged woman such as herself. Benjamin had little time or patience for banter. Hi, Maureen. This is Eric. He's a patient of mine. Eric's head turned back to his doctor as he felt another division. I've scheduled some time in the lab for blood work. Yes, doctor, the lab is yours until 1. She looked back to Eric. Her expression was free of any patient-civilian class division that he felt and expected to see from her. Now, if he's not nice to you in there, you just let me know. Okay, sweetie? Both men reciprocated Maureen the pleasant, appropriate smile before Maynard turned sharply and passed through the security door. Patient log entry 24. November 15. Verity blood sample session. The initial results of blood testing are far more staggering than I could have hoped. I am undoubtedly encouraged to continue my testing. Neither Maynard nor Eric really knew what to expect from blood testing. Eric had never been sick. He never required a shot, needed to give blood, or receive a transfusion. No one had ever tried to stick a needle through his skin that had bounced bullets and withstood fire. Continued patient log notes. I bent 3 needles on his forearm. It was surreal. His skin would bend as I poked, but would not puncture. From all I could gather, his epidermal layer is superficially normal. Follicles and pores appear as they should be. Veins are visible beneath. I wasn't able to extract a sample myself for closer examination. Eric detected a mixture of frustration and pleasure as he watched his doctor curiously fiddle with the needles. Mumbled to himself when the needles bent. His quiet exclamations had an undetectable emotional nature. The instincts he'd come to rely on sensed no danger. He enjoyed his doctor's newfound enthusiasm and wanted to see him find what he sought. While Maynard paced back and forth in front of him, speaking to his ever-present recorder, Eric reached for one of the needles on the table next to his reclining chair. He hooked it up to the end of the clear tube hanging beside him as he'd seen Maynard do, and carefully brought the new needle to the point in his forearm he'd watched Maynard poke at. He squinted slightly as he forced the needle through his skin in his arm. A stream of red soon flowed through the needle and up to the tube. His eyes were pulled from the red stream as he noticed Maynard had stopped pacing. With the spinning cassette recorder barely audible, the tiny tape kept recording the silence as Maynard stood stunned over Eric. Notes continued. I had my suspicions about Eric's physiological makeup. His documented incidents denote the possibility of some level of physical invulnerability. I had considered that fact before planning the blood work. The event of this circulatory system being unattainable by conventional means, I'd planned oral saliva samples. To my moderate surprise, I couldn't penetrate his skin with a needle. To my absolute shock, he could. I have no doubt that the blood sample results will offer immeasurable information in the nature of Eric's abilities. But I don't know how to measure what I've learned here today. Eric can't be injured, but he can apparently injure himself. Throughout his solitary life, Eric was plagued and ridiculed by aspects of social circles around him that he didn't get. Failing to get these nuances of social society kept the circles from extending to include him. Eric didn't understand pride, nor did he get wrath, greed, or vanity. He didn't understand the significance in discovering his own vulnerability, and he didn't get the impending pressure of his growing public status. But he was about to. With a smile affixed proudly across his face, a reflection of that of Dr. Maynard's, Eric briskly exited the laboratory. He opened the door, returning to the main entrance, and came into a near collision with Maureen's own beaming grin. She stood waiting for him as close as she could get to the lab's restricted area. Her inviting look was now more familiar than flirtatious. Eric had to take a step back from her in the interest of personal space. I know you. You're Eric Verity, aren't you? The sound of someone he didn't know saying his name like she knew him rang so oddly in his ears. He didn't know what to say to her. Yes, I am. You're the guy I saw in the paper. You're that hero. She had a way of closing in on him even when she was already too close. Eric didn't know what to say. Hero? Yeah, you saved those people in the motel and those runaway girls. The intensity of her enthusiasm grew with every word. Oh, I wish I had my camera. The girls are never going to believe this. Can I get an autograph? Yes. This couldn't really be happening. Adoration was still as alien to Eric as a foreign language. He carefully scribed his name on the slip of paper Maureen excitedly provided. His signature was an embarrassment by celebrity standards. He never mastered cursive handwriting. It was one of those things that he couldn't grasp a need for. Every time he had to leave his authorization or approval, it was a simple printed version, almost as perfectly straight as a standard typeface. Eric Verity was printed in block letters on the slip of paper. No. Put my name on it, too. Like an autograph. Put, to Maureen, my favorite lady. That made sense to him. Part of the authentication. In the same perfect block writing. To my favorite lady, Eric Verity. She giggled. I guess you're new at this autograph thing. She looked over it when he finished, unable to politely hide her disappointment over the unspectacularness of her keepsake. She reinflated her smile as Eric motioned to leave. Thank you, my boy. I hope you're there the next time I need saving. Eric smiled warmly, as he could, through his bewilderment, and headed for the door. The pride over the successful day's testing was now forgotten to Eric as he started down the street, his mind now revolving over his surreal exchange moments before. As Maureen's admiration settled into his skin, he started to warm all over. He'd never felt important before. As the oddity of the encounter started to fade, the energy brewing in his body fueled his first ego trip. It started to raise his chest and show up in his smile. Excuse me, are you Eric Verity? The kid in front of him had his pen and paper ready. Benjamin watched Eric on the sidewalk with a young admirer from the center's laboratory window. He remarked at Eric's awkward graciousness. The corners of his mouth climbed his face to his eyes, and he turned and went back to his work. Thank you for listening to Part 6 of The Hero Business. If you like this story so far and you want more, or you feel compelled to throw your support in my direction, the fastest route is through my website, patrickhughes.ca. There you'll find access to my other projects, links to my books and ebooks on various platforms, and a contact me function if you want to send me a note or request something specific. You can also add your valuable support by liking and subscribing and sharing on whatever platform you're visiting. It really does make a difference. Please add your voice with a click if you like what you hear. I do hope you share this. Never keep good fiction a secret. Thanks.